Hi everyone. I'm here this afternoon with Izzy Lawrence, and we're going to talk about her new book, which is one in her Time Machine Next Door series. So, without further ado, if I pass over to you, Izzy, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about what the books are about, and even if
Yeah.
possible, could we have a reading?
Okay, so there are two out at once, which I don't think Bloomsbury's done before, which is very exciting, which means I had to write two books at once, which is a lot. Okay, it's a lot. They're called The Time Machine Next Door, mainly because if you have a look here, we've got Sunil, there he is. He lives next door to Alex, who's made a time machine. And that's kind of it. But obviously, Sunil doesn't know. Nobody knows that Alex has made a time machine because she's like the best inventor ever. Until one day, Sunil accidentally breaks his granddad's record. And this is like a family heirloom. It's a big deal. And he's not even supposed to play cricket in the house. So really, it's his own fault. And what happens is Alex basically says, well, one way of repairing a record is just not repair it and go back in time and get a fresh one. But she does swear him to secrecy first. So I thought I'd read you that bit and then I'll go into the sort of like, bit more about where they go and what they do and why. So this is him being sworn to secrecy. Alex frowns. Swear that you'll never tell any other living soul, or you will no longer support India at cricket. You'll be an England fan instead. Snell looked up. He could imagine what his cousins would say if he began supporting England. Alex stood with her arms folded, waiting for him to agree. I swear, Sunil said, putting the piece of metal into his pocket. Alex beamed. She opened the door with a flourish. Inside was disappointing. On top of Alex's downstairs toilet, there was an old filing cabinet with lots of tubes and wires sticking out of it. There was a screen, some handles, and two drawers. Sunil blinked. Can this repair the record? Update complete, said a computer voice. You look positive today. Alex blushed. I've programmed it to give me affirmations. Your hair is shiny. Thanks, BM. She started clicking different buttons and widgets. We don't need to repair the record if we can go back in time and get an exact copy. I've been wanting to tell people about BM for ages, but I haven't got it perfectly running yet. You've invented a time machine? I call it the boring machine, BM for short, said Alex. I think you're marvellous, the machine said. A boring machine. You know how when you're really bored, time slows down, Alex said. Yeah. If time slows down when you're slightly bored, she explained, then it will get slower still when you're super bored. When you are mega bored, time stops, interrupted the machine. Nice shoes. Thanks, said Sunil. Alex's eyes sparkled. I calculated that it is possible to be so bored that the clock doesn't just stop, it ticks backwards. So you can go back in time any way you want. Not quite. I need an object that was there in the past, like this. She placed the fragments of Sunil's broken record into the drawer in the side of the machine. It uses an electron microscope to measure the atoms to see where it's been. Then I feed the boring machine something dull. She ran to the back of the room and came back with an old-fashioned cassette tape. Like a recording of grown-ups talking about mortgages? Yummy, said the boring machine as Alec placed it in a different drawer. And how'd you get back? Sunil asked. The boring machine can't hold you down in the past for too long. If you get too excited, your timeline finds you and brings you back to the present day. It feels like it's pulling you by the belly button. I'll stop there because that was quite a long reading. But you get the idea. That is sort of where it starts. And of course, they go back in time and they follow this record. Turns out it ends up in the American embassy back in the 1960s, and maybe he ends up meeting Neil Armstrong, or maybe they get arrested and they've got to kind of escape and get outside before their time machine gets sucks them back up into the future. So yes, that is the sort of premise of the book. In the first one, Explorers and Milkshakes, they meet Neil Armstrong and Ernest Shackleton, and obviously because there's a boring machine, there has to be an interesting machine, and the boring machine obviously takes you into the past. Can you imagine what the interesting machine does? Well, you're wrong. It makes milkshakes. So you've got here Wiki the Kiwi. See, he has been trained by Mr. Shakes, who owns the Interesting Machine, to snuffle out interesting facts. And guess what? There is nothing more interesting on the planet than the first boy who went back in time. And he might be tried to be fed into the Interesting Machine, and there's all sorts of perils about what happens there. But that's basically the books, and obviously they may survive this one because there's another one, or maybe this one happened before the other one. You'll have to read them to find out what happens.
You may not be that good with gadgets, Izzy. However, you are very good with lots of other things. Podcasting, children's books. Goodness me, you do keep yourself busy, don't you?
I do. At the moment, I'm on BBC Radio 4 on Saturdays at 10 a.m. if you want to listen to me spewing facts about geography on Sean Keaveney's Your Place or Mine. So I'm doing that, as well as writing lots of books. Because that's the thing. The reason I came up with these books is because I've been writing these sort of books, which are basically time historical fiction. I'm like the Hilary Mantel for kids, but these are historical fiction, right? And they're set in one place, and that's great because you can really do a deep dive. So here we talk about the transatlantic slave trade. There's all sorts of actual facts about pirates, including where they poo, things like that. It's all in here, but you're stuck in one place. And so many like kids that I've been to doing like school talks and that sort of say, oh, what about here? What about here? What about here? And the beauty of the time travel machine, you can go anywhere with a boring machine. And that's why these sort of came about, is because I wanted to do multiple places just to really bring history alive.
And I think one of the things that struck me that I loved was the fact that you've got yes, it's a fictional book, but there are so many facts interspersed into it, which I think is wonderful, because lots of kids will eat up those facts, and that'll be what will draw them in to enjoy the story.
So yeah. even things like so Wiki the Kiwi, obviously trained to snuffle out facts. I didn't arbitrarily pick a kiwi just to be weird. Kiwis have the best sense of smell of any bird because they've got their nostrils right at the tip of their nose. They've also got really bad eyesight and everything else because they're nocturnal on the island. And also I had to, this is how factually accurate I am, I changed Wiki's gender, because Wiki initially, when the first draft of the book was a girl, and apparently I researched, I went to New Zealand. I didn't go to New Zealand, but I spoke to New Kiwis themselves, and they said that no, because Wiki peeps. So Wiki makes this sort of noise, right? And that's a peep. Now, females don't make that noise. They just shriek. And I thought that'd be a bit much for a kid's book if we have kind of happening all the time. So Wiki can also shriek, can't you? Yes. And run very fast. But yes, so everything's been informed by actual reality, mainly because I'm really bad at making stuff up. That's kind of my weakness as an author, is I'm like catching an octopus. If you put an amphory on the floor of the ocean, octopuses get inside because they like the constraint, and I love the constraint of real facts and real history.
You also do in podcasting, aren't you? So you podcast.
That's right.
Tell us a bit more about that.
So I make podcasts. I've been podcasting since 2008, and I make podcasts for the BBC and things like that. But I also make them for places like the British Museum, which is why I'm quite pleased with the Time Machine using real objects. So you have to follow an object's timeline, which gives you a real sort of sense of, like, you can go to, I'm not suggesting people break into museums and steal objects just to put them in the boring machine and go back in past, but, it's a temptation, isn't it? But also I make podcasts, like one of my favourite ones, which I did during lockdown, which is still going. It's called Terrible Lizards, and that is mainly for grown-ups, but there's nothing to stop children listening. We got loads of children listening to it. Very nerdy. It's a podcast about dinosaurs called Terrible Lizards. And I do that with a paleontologist called David Hone, who is like an international proper like doctor and all that sort of thing. So he studies loads of mainly tyrannosaurs and pterosaurs. Pterosaurs not being dinosaurs, obviously, but tyrannosaurs definitely are. But yes. So I do those as well. So this is how I keep busy.
Okay. Which of the many things that you do, which with your podcasting and your comedian and your writing for children, which gives you most satisfaction? What do you enjoy most?
Depends. It really depends on how you're feeling, because writing can be awful. Most of writing, as I explain to kids, is sort of this. That's mostly what writing is. It's sort of looking off in one direction and going, oh my goodness, what happens next? The one advantage of historical fiction, though, is there's never writer's block, because there's always more research you can do. But what I like is showing off. So after I've written a book, I love to go into schools and chat to people and get them to write historical fiction as well. And I like to show off to children. And we play a lot of games. Like, even these have only been out. I've already been up to like places like Durham and done stuff with kids. One really good one is you get kids to say, what would you put in the boring drawer? So what's the most boring thing you can think of? So we've had everything from my dad's jumper to outside. Unbuttered toast is the best so far, but that's what you put to power the boring machine. And you've got to put an object in the object drawer. So what would you put in and where would you go? And it's even fun just to get a random coin out your pocket and just say, oh, this was, minted in 2005. No one was alive back in 2005, were they? Well, they were. What were they doing? What was life like then? What's the differences? And talk about that. It's actually a really fun way. And then make a little story, sort of, where would you go? Even if I don't know if I got it here. Look, this is what sort of thing I keep on my desk. Look, it's a rock. Now, this I picked up in the park, but this is probably created in the late Jurassic, because knowing the flint around here. So, we can go anywhere. We can go see this kiwi's early relatives, the dinosaurs, plodding around here. Maybe they kicked this rock too. So you can go anywhere in history as long as you follow its timeline. So it'll have to be somewhere in Reading, this rock, I reckon. I don't think it's moved very far from Reading, from where it was created. But, you can have a really good time writing a little story with the kids themselves, which I always find really great. So showing off is the answer. If I get to show off, I'm happy.
In which case, for people watching, and there'll be lots of librarians watching who will be going, we really need to get her into our school. How do they book a visit with you, Iszi?
Well, you can go to my website, iszi.com, izzy.com, iszi.com, or you can go to Authors Aloud. I'm part of their thing, so you could just, book me easily through there, and I really do enjoy it, so it's quite fun. And I do work with older kids as well, so we do, imagine, really put yourself back in time with, proper. So we just pick the curriculum that they're doing in history. We try and make a story around it, and it's kind of up to the kids which way we go and what we do. So I've had things like, I've been in Iron Age Britain, we've done Iron Age Britain, and we had Boudicca, because she had two daughters. Well, apparently, according to one class down in Maidenhead, she also had a son. So, and he wanted, because Romans do cool things like they've got really nice militaries and they can write in Latin, and he thought that was really cool. So he wants to join the Roman army, and then we had to write a scene where Boudicca discovers her son leaving to join the Roman army and tries to stop him, and we'd write a little dramatic scene about that. But it's great because we sort of workshop it as a class, and then we sort of get together and write it together, which is basically how I write books. So all I'm doing is just going, here's a fun bit of history. What do I find interesting about it? How do we make that dramatic? And let's put the maximum amount of confrontation in there. And it's usually pretty fun.
Izzy, goes without saying, we are completely out of time, which I knew we would be. Just to finish off by saying, if you are looking at these books for your school or your school library, what sort of age range do you think you'd put on them? And I probably would say about 7 upwards, that sort of.
I think they say 7 to 9 is what they're aiming at. I know precocious 6-year-olds would be fine, absolutely fine reading them and everything else. So, and also I know some 40-year-olds who've read these and enjoyed them. So there's no reason that, older kids wouldn't enjoy them too. But they're beautifully illustrated all the way through. She says not finding a single illustrate. And also, once again, I was really horrible to Rebecca. So the actual pictures of everybody are, I think I've got, there's Charles Darwin showing them his worms, but that is what Charles Darwin would have been wearing. We made sure that everything looked good. There is Isaac Newton there in his blacked out office, looking very grumpy indeed, because he's taken his wig off and everything else. So, there's a lot to stimulate as well, and I think the font's really readable and accessible, and all the little facts are sort of ripped off and down and below, so there's a nice little thing, so you can just read the story or you can just read the facts if you're one of those kids.
Well, I think as well, with having the facts separate, it makes it very dippable into, if you know what I mean. So you can just read the straightforward story and then go back and dip into the facts when you feel like it, and I think that's a really nice facility for kids, because especially for well, not just for, but especially for reluctant readers, because they can focus on one thing and then they can come back in and read a little bit at a time of the facts, which I think should be very successful. But, don't quote me. Don't quote me, Izzy, because,
Well, I mean, when I was a kid, about that age, I loved horrible histories and things like that. And they do the facts so well. I wanted to replicate that as much as possible because, particularly when you do a lot of research and you can't get all the facts in the story, it's great to go, oh, this as well. And you never know. I want to basically raise a generation and help bring them up who are going to be expert at pub quizzes. That is.
Thank you so much for coming along.
Thanks for speaking to me. And do put my books on shelves, please.
Yeah.
They're
Well,
good.
I'll pop on my shelf.
I can see, yeah.
They are there. Okay, take care, Izzy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye.